Today, I'm going to talk about the first noble truth. That is the fundamental teaching by Buddha. So I actually have decided that over the coming weeks, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm going to start to explore with you the fundamental teachings of Buddha. And in fact, through my research and readings now, many Western psychologists who are studying Buddha's teaching seem to think that Buddha is almost like a physician because he's not trying to teach a religion. What he was really trying to teach from his own awakening is that there are certain truths about being human, about being on this earth, that if we can understand and if we can apply some really practical practices such as mindfulness into our life, we can alleviate the suffering. So there is also, I think, a misconception, and I was like that, 20 years ago, thinking Buddhism is all about suffering and it's very grim. But in fact, actually, the more I study his teachings, I realize that what he's actually trying to teach is that there is also a solution. So in the Four Noble Truths, how he's laid it all out is like a psychological diagnosis. He's saying there are symptoms of being a human being, there are causes for it, but there is a possibility for healing and that there is a cure. And so the cure is the Eightfold Path. And I'll be going through this in the coming weeks. Today we're going to talk about the First Noble Truth, which is that life inevitably contains suffering, and suffering is unavoidable. So firstly, I'd like to just pull apart what do we mean by suffering. There is the gross suffering, which is obviously, the tragedies of life and death. We all suffer losses from, people we love, from death, but there's also, of course, the natural catastrophe. You just have to turn on the news to hear about the earthquake in Turkey or the flash flood in New Zealand recently. So there's all those natural catastrophes that as human beings on this earth, some of us are unlucky enough to face, but there's also those other ones like the oppression and being in a war-torn country. So that's the gross suffering that we all know about. It can be extremely painful, it can be traumatic. And then, of course, there's the milder sufferings from illnesses, COVID, fatigue, burnout. And then there's also the subtle suffering. So the subtle suffering is the dissatisfaction of looking at ourselves in the mirror and going, I'm too fat, or everything is sagging, or why do I have this grey hair, or the dissatisfaction of paying a lot of money for a cup of coffee that you're really looking forward to, and then getting it and then realizing it was made badly and it wasn't strong enough, or it's too cold or too hot. And then, of course, there is that loneliness or jealousy or frustrations with our loved ones, our neighbors. So these are the subtle sufferings, and over the next few weeks, we'll talk about the cause of it and what is the cure. But in terms of even just realizing that being human on this earth, there is this sort of experiences that is unavoidable. I was reflecting a lot on this recently, and knowing that doesn't actually weigh me down, but instead it actually helped me to feel a bit less stressed. I actually feel like it allows me to accept whatever I was going through, because when I think about our physical body, right, we're all born in this body. Did we ask for it? Not really. Did we ask to be born? Not really. We can't, I don't know, maybe if we remember our past life, we might be able to remember that. But for most of us, we didn't ask to be born. We didn't ask to have this body, but we have a body with 5 senses. We see, we touch, we smell, we hear, and we have nerve endings, we have neurotransmitters, we have hormones in our body, and all of these things are made for us to feel. And so to to understand this, the fact that, well, to feel, we can't just choose to feel nice things, soft things, pleasant things, because the reality is if we don't know hard things, how would we know soft things? If we don't know bitterness, how would we know that something else is sweet? So we need both. We need to be able to experience the difference to know the other. And also, I realized like our body has tear ducts. So we're made to cry. And so there is a purpose in our, in all of this, that of course, therefore, it is perfectly all right when we feel grief or sorrow to cry, because that's all part of being human. But for many of us, in our conditioning, our cultural upbringing, we are conditioned to push away suffering, to avoid suffering, to not want to feel pain. And what resists persists. We've heard about this. And also, the more we resist, the more painful it can be. And you might have heard me say this before. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is avoidable. So in that sense that we can ease our suffering by not pushing it away, by not wishing things to be different, but to accept things as they are, accept that it has happened, accept that this is the way it is. So one of the things that I said before is that we didn't ask to be born, right? Certainly we were born into parents that were just given to us. Some of us are lucky enough to have loving parents, but some of us are unlucky enough to have dysfunctional parents. And that, how the parents we have very largely determine our childhood, and then our conditioning. And then it's really those of us who are perhaps lucky enough to have the awareness that we want change, we want to do better, we want to be better, that then we go down the path of transformation or working on ourselves. But the first step is that sometimes we are born into conditions we have no control over. And so today I wanted to share with you a story from this book that I've had for years, called Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? And it's by a monk called Ajahn Brahm. And he says here, unpleasant things like coming last in our class happen in life. They happen to everybody. The only difference between a happy person and one who gets depressed is how they respond to disasters. Imagine you have just had a wonderful afternoon at the beach with a friend. When you return home, you find a huge truckload of dung has been dumped right in front of your door. There are 3 things to know about this truckload of dung. You did not order it. It is not your fault. You're stuck with it. No one saw who dumped it, so you cannot call anyone to take it away. It is filthy and offensive, and its stench fills your whole house. It is impossible to endure. In this metaphor, the truckload of dung in front of the house stands for the traumatic experiences that are dumped on us in life. As with the truckload of dung, there are 3 things to know about tragedy in our life. We did not order it. It is not our fault. We say, why me? We're stuck with it. No one, not even the ones who love us most dearly, can take it away, though they may try. It is so awful. Such a destroyer of our happiness, and its pain fills our whole life. It is almost impossible to endure. There are 2 ways of responding to being stuck with a truckload of dung. The first way is to carry the dung around with us. We put some in our pockets, in our backpacks, our briefcases, our shirts, we put them down our pants. Even best friends don't seem to be around so often. We lose friends because we carry our dung around us. Carrying around the dung is a metaphor for sinking into negativity, depression, or anger. Fortunately, there's a second way. When a truckload of dung is dumped in front of our house, we heave a sigh and then get down to work. Out come the wheelbarrow, the fork, and the spade. We fork the dung into the barrel, wheel it around the back of the house, and dig it into the garden. This is tiring and difficult work, but we know there's no other useful option. Sometimes all we can manage is half a barrel a day. But even so, we're doing something about the problem rather than complaining our way into depression. Day after day, we dig in the dung. Day after day, the piles get a little smaller. Sometimes it takes several years, but the morning does come when we see that the dung in front of our house is all gone. Furthermore, a miracle has happened in another part of our house. The flowers in the garden are bursting out in a richness of color all over the place. Their fragrance wafts down the street so that the neighbors and even passers-by smile in delight. Then the fruit tree in the corner is nearly falling over. It's so heavy with fruit. So digging in the dung is a metaphor for welcoming the tragedies as fertilizer for life. It may take several years, but the morning does come when we see no more pain in our life and in our heart. A miracle has happened. Flowers of kindness are bursting out all over the place, and the fragrance of love wafts way down our street to our neighbors, to our relations, and even to passers-by. Then our wisdom tree in the corner is bending down to us, loaded with sweet insights into the nature of life. We share those delicious fruits freely, even with the passers-by, without ever planning to. And so, there it is. That suffering is unavoidable. They are like dungs that have been thrown into our front garden, even though we didn't ask for them. But we can see them as fertilizers for life. So the way I see it is that properly understanding the first noble truth really helps us to see things as they truly are, that it is normal to experience whatever sufferings, whatever dissatisfaction, whatever shortcomings that we may feel we have in ourselves, in our life, and just be accepting of it, and not to the point that we don't do anything about it, but certainly to balance it with kindness and compassion, but also to trust that we do have within us that power to transform that suffering. And in the next few weeks you'll learn how, but for starters it's really about accepting and surrendering to what is. And I constantly feel that I remind myself that this saying, we are really spiritual beings having a human experience. And being human, we have sufferings and we have a body, we have limitations, but we also have a superpower called love. And all we need to do is really be present and stay grounded. So on that note, I'm going to take you through a short meditation. So sit in the way you're comfortable sitting, and closing your eyes to allow you to go within. Just sort of take a moment to take some deep breath. And with every exhale, Just sense the tension that you may be holding in your body to release. Perhaps as you do that, also set an intention to just allow yourself for the next 10 minutes to just be here, leaving aside whatever responsibilities, whatever jobs, whatever thoughts you may have about anything, concerns, issues, just leaving them aside and giving yourself this next 10 minutes to be right here. So bringing your awareness to the breath, and just begin to notice the effect of your in-breath to the body and the effect of the out-breath to the body. If the mind continues to be busy, to deepen your breath. And see if you could sense that the breath is helping to calm the mind and calm the body. And as you sit here, you're the observer, you're the witness. The awareness that you are breathing, the awareness that you have a body, the awareness that the breath has an energy that lifts you up on the in-breath and settles and calms you on the out-breath. As you follow the breath, you may notice that as your body becomes calmer, your mind becomes calmer, the breath becomes fainter. And this is very natural. And you may sense this spaciousness in the mind and spaciousness in the body. And all the while you are the observer, just noticing, just sensing, just being here, allowing things to be as they are, not striving to change, not grasping, but just be. As you sit here in this stillness, in this space that is calm, still, spacious, remember that the present moment is all we have, that suffering happens to everyone, big or small. We don't have to feel like a victim to our suffering, but we also don't have to be submerged in our suffering. We don't have to turn away from our suffering. We don't have to feel embarrassed by our suffering, because everyone suffers. Everyone has challenges in their lives. It's all part of being human, and really we're all in it together. Take a moment now to set an intention for yourself, for this week, for this day. Take a deep breath in and seal the intention in your heart.